Welcome to the India Fintech Diaries, the only podcast focused exclusively on the Indian fintech market. I'm Elroy.
And I'm Hemant. In each episode, we dive into the latest trends, ideas, innovations, business models, and personalities that are shaping India's fintech landscape.
We also invite amazing guests who are innovators and industry players that are driving the change that is helping make financial services more modern, innovative, and inclusive in India. Come join us as we explore the changing landscape of fintech in India.
Hi everyone and welcome back to India Fintech Diaries. I am Hemant and I'm joined by my co-host Elroy. Elroy, have you ever applied for a health insurance claim?
Well, Hemant, luckily for me personally, I haven't had to apply for an health insurance scheme, but from what I've heard from people who have, it's a complete nightmare. So there are multiple complications. In most cases, people don't know what policy they have, the terms, their complicated processes. Multiple documents are often required. And since very often it's a very rare event, so a lot of people have a very limited understanding of the claim process as well.
Absolutely, Elroy. And generally it is painful. And in my previous job, actually, I used to work for an insurance company. So the experience is not very uncommon. But more than that, the second order impact it creates is a mistrust that it develops in a customer's mind about an insurance product. And that person may not decide to buy insurance product in the future, right? And luckily, we have someone who is solving exactly for that, the mistrust. We have with us today Anuj Jindal, co-founder and CEO of SureClaim. Welcome to India Fintech Diaries, Anuj.
Hey, thanks, Hemant and Elroy, for having me here. Looking forward to a very interesting conversation.
Anuj, you spent most of your career on the health provider side of the ecosystem. So I want to understand what made you switch to the insurance side of the ecosystem. Tell us a little bit of yourself and the genesis of SureClaim.
So definitely, I spent a lot of time working for hospitals. And one of the aspects that I learned firsthand was that when we are serving patients at the hospitals, they are clueless about insurance. In fact, hospitals are clueless about insurance, what it covers, what it does not. And consequently, it's like two blind people trying to do a financial transaction. They just don't know that what is it, how it will be paid for. And our entry into insurance was from a very different perspective. So if you see my career, I've worked with hospitals and then I worked with Healthechs. So I worked with Healthechs such as Quickwell and then Practo back in 2014 and 2015. And so one of the realization during that time was that the entire advancement which was happening around the outpatient experiences, which is how do I book appointment for doctor online, how do I get pharmacy delivered to my home, and then how do I get a lab test done at home. So a lot of advancement was happening on that part. But then when it comes to hospitalization, there were hardly any player at that point in time. And while one of the challenges, how do you find a hospital which fits your budget? The problem gets amplified when you have insurance because you don't know how insurance will pay for that. And then the pool of choice also is limited because you're trying to find cashless. And so you have to narrow down your options to go to a specific set of hospitals. We started thinking about this problem statement that how do we facilitate hospitalization? One of the key things that we did was we spoke to a couple of friends out there. Like you said, that you have spoken to a couple of people and people have pretty bad experience. Similar thing was narrated by other people in our friend circles. And two problems came out very clearly. Number one was people did not know what insurance to buy. They were really not clear because it's a very complex product. So you are not able to compare apples and oranges to clearly say what is it that you want. And the second challenge was, even if I have insurance, I do not know how to recover the money from a claim because, again, it's an opaque process. And then the hospital pricing as well is also complex. So I, along with my co-founder Varun, and both of us were colleagues at Practo when we started off, and both of us understood the entire landscape of health tech very clearly at that time. So SureClaim was born more like a health tech, and eventually the entire InsurTech tag was put on to us. So we were trying to solve for people who are trying to seek treatment at a hospital, and how do we use insurance to solve that problem for those guys? Because claim is incidental, but most important thing is I'm trying to use the insurance policy to seek healthcare. So how do we bridge that gap is the problem statement we were trying to solve initially.
That's very interesting, Anuj. And this also kind of brings me to what's happening today globally, right? So globally, if you see the last 2 years, the pandemic has been pretty brutal for people who are on the borders of the poverty line. in fact, is estimated to have pushed maybe an additional 88 million to 15 million people into extreme poverty. And this has kind of set back any progress that was done for poverty alleviation over the last decade. And India's story is not very different. The pandemic, and a lot of us have memories of last year when it was pretty terrible, right? This has brought forth the resilience of an Indian household to withstand a medical shock and to sharp focus. And this is exactly the problem that insurance solves for. But still, in India, if you look at it, we have very limited penetration of health insurance. So, in your opinion, what could be some of the reasons for this?
If you look at how insurance today is purchased, it's largely driven by employers. So about 70 to 80% of the entire insured population that we have, and I'm talking about the private ones. I'm not
Right.
talking about the government schemes like Ayushman Bharat and other government schemes. But when we talk about the premiums paid by organizations and individuals, from that perspective, almost 3/4 of the market is by employers. And from the remaining market, which buys in retail, basically people pay the premium on their own and buy insurance. There's a lot of overlap, right? So you are working with
Yeah.
XYZ company and you're buying insurance for yourself. So the standalone population, which does not have a company cover and they have purchased on their own, is actually significantly small than the numbers which are reported by IRDA. Now, your question is, why is that the case? And that is precisely what we're trying to understand and then solve later on. As I mentioned, the first one is the complexity of the product itself. So if you're trying to buy a television, for example, it's easy for you to say that, I like a feature, I don't like a feature. It's easy for you to make that choice. If you're trying to buy a phone also, you can ask your friends around. They can tell you that what is it that they have purchased, and you might say, okay, I want to buy Xiaomi, or I want to go for a Samsung phone or an Oppo or an Apple phone. But then when it comes to insurance, your friend circle or everything else does not, come handy to you, because first of all, the very, very small base. You will not come across many people around you who would have insurance.
That's true.
Number two, the product itself is very complex. And another thing which is not highlighted very well, there is in fact not much of study available as well, is how much of the past bad experience of customers is posing as a hurdle for the new people who are entering the insurance pool. Like, for example, if I had a bad experience and I tell you that, I faced so much of hassle, the agent cheated me, the insurance company cheated me. So what kind of impression I'm making in your mind about insurance?
Yeah.
Isn't it? So it creates a drag among the people. So I would say there are three set of audience in the market. Number one is the people who are confused. So they're trying to purchase, but they don't know what to purchase. Number two are the people who are fence sitters. So they're overwhelmed by the complexity of whatever they are listening,
Correct.
whatever they're absorbing. And so they just sit at the corner and say, okay, let somebody solve it for me, make it simple for me, and then
Yeah.
I'll make a decision. What's the hurry? And then there is a third set of people who are so scarred and scared of insurance. I'll go to this point to say, right, they're scarred as well. So very recently, about 10 days back, Juk Surya was writing in Times of India, and he narrated a personal experience. Now, I'll not get into whether it was a right or wrong experience, but the kind of picture he painted for health insurance was pretty bad. So I think all of these things built that public perception that insurance is not good. Insurance is unfriendly, I would say. And for the employer market, anyways, when you join a company, you have no choice. You get it as part of your employee benefits. And so consequently, you will use it. You don't need to make any decisioning around that. So I think this is pretty much what is happening. Having said that, in the recent past, couple of players who have entered in the market are trying to solve by solving for not just perception. I can solve perception by marketing. I can build very fancy advertisements and entice you. But I think there are companies who are trying to now solve for customer journeys, customer decisioning, simplifying the products by working alongside insurance companies and saying that, hey, now this is my target audience. I would like you to make a simpler version of a health plan. And there are also newer kind of insurance models coming up. So India till date has seen indemnity-based insurance products. Now, a managed care or a health maintenance kind of products or subscription-based products are also coming in the market, which are more simplified, more rich of features. So I think all of those innovations are coming now to the market, and I see that the future is bright going from here.
Understood. Understood, Anuj. And Anuj, while researching for this episode, I just looked at some data and I have some data in front of me. So in 2021, $7.8 billion of health insurance premium was underwritten and $5 billion of health claims were disbursed. But if you just look on the other side, just the private hospital market in 2021 was $132 billion. And just as you said, that means a lot of this expense is coming out of the customer pocket. But as you just rightly explained, there are three major problems which are causing this, right? One is awareness. The second is the clear understanding of the policy because the product is really complicated. And the third big one, which is normally not seen, is the mistrust due to bad experience. Now, as you explained, a lot of players are coming in and solving different parts of this problem statement. And you and SureClaim as well is in that space to solve for a lot of these problems. So can you help us understand what specific problem SureClaim is solving and how it does that?
Yeah, sure. So what we realized was that, and that has been our key insight from talking to customers over a period of time, is even if you try to educate customers at the point of purchase or point of onboarding a health plan, the point of use is far ahead in time. So people would forget whatever has been told to them. And at the point of use event, which is hospitalization, you are dealing with not one but two complexities. One is the complexity of the product itself, health plan, and then the second one is the complexity of health pricing. Now I'll probably take a minute to talk about the complexity of health pricing, which is that today, if you are undergoing treatment under, say, a Dr. Rahul, as an example, and so Dr. Rahul is going to treat you for some disease, and for that you need to be hospitalized. You're probably going to pay 1 lakh rupee if you admit in a general ward. Okay, and the general ward is going to cost you 3,000 rupees per day. However, if you were to admit in a twin sharing ward, where only two patients will be there, the same treatment under Dr. Rahul is going to cost you probably 1.8 lakhs. And if you do not want to share the room with other patients, you just want to have a room exclusively to yourself, then the same Dr. Rahul will treat you for probably 2.5, 3 lakhs. And you would wonder, I am being treated the same way. You are using the same drugs. You're writing the same tests for me. And my clinical outcome is the same. However, I'm paying separate rates. Whereas my general ward was costing me 3,000 rupees, the twin sharing ward was costing 5,000 rupees, and the private ward was 7,000 rupees. So while the room rent increment is only 2,000, 3,000, the cost of treatment that I end up paying jumps significantly, right? And this is something which is not intuitive to Indian customers. They don't understand why this is happening, and hospitals also do a very poor job at explaining. Sorry, I'm a ex-hospital guy. I will admit this thing that the industry has done a really bad job at explaining to customers. And interestingly, customers do not ask. And there's a lot of debate around, that we need a health regulator. I would say even customers do not even ask these questions at hospitals. They're powerless in getting answers to these questions. So think about it. You are at the hospital admission desk and you are carrying an insurance policy, and then you're dealing with this kind of complex hospital pricing. And then you have to make a decision for a loved one who is now getting admitted. What will you do? Right? Your instinct at this moment is forget it. Let me seek the treatment. I will figure out everything later on.
Correct.
That's what people do. Right? And so when we started SureClaim, and when we looked at data, so thanks for sharing the IRDA report that you said. So back in 2016, when we were looking at the data, half of insurance dispersal was in reimbursement claims. Another half was in cashless. And what we spoke to our friends and colleagues at that time was that cashless is fine because whatever insurance is going to pay is between insurance company and the hospital. But when it comes to a reimbursement claim, which is half of the total volume, I have to do the paperwork with the insurance company as a consumer. And then insurance company asks me several questions. This is not there. That is not there. I have to fill up a very strange claim form. And then after all of that exercise and, several months are spent, I don't know why I got less money, right? I spent, say, 2 lakhs and I'm getting 1 lakh. Why the 1 lakh was gone? So people have no clue. And, later on, if you, for example, if you delve a little deeper, insurance company will give you a claim settlement letter. Most people can't make head and tail of that letter. I'm not saying it is complex, but I'm saying it is not intuitive to end user. Okay. So while this is something that industry and hospitals do on a day-to-day basis, as an end consumer, nobody solves it for me. So the way we try to solve this problem is on three fronts. Number one is that at the time of admission, because people are in a hurry to admit, they need a simple cue to act on. They don't want a complexity of, tell me my policy terms, conditions, educate me how the hospital pricing is done. They simply want this idea that will my treatment be covered in this policy in this hospital or not? And number B, how much I have to pay from my pocket? Because that's what you're concerned, right? As a
Right.
customer. Your expectation is insurance will cover everything or most of it. And so can you confirm back to me how much my insurance is going to pay me? Because basis that information, I can decide whether to admit in this hospital or not, or whether to take a private ward or double sharing or a general ward in this hospital. So that is the first problem statement. Now, if you make a wrong decision at this stage, downstream when you are making a claim, you're done. You can't undo the decisions you have made, right? So that
Right.
is one problem that we solve using our product, which is an eligibility search tool, wherein you can upload your insurance policy, tell us your insurance, tell us your treatment that you are going for, and what is the estimate given to you by the hospital for the room category that you're going for, and then our algorithm does whatever is required to be done in terms of calculations, and then it throws out a number to you. And so there are two parts of information that we provide to users, which is whether your treatment will be covered or not. And if yes, it is covered, then how much do you expect insurance to pay you and how much you end up paying from your side as part of the hospitalization. So that is one part. So if the share that you have to pay is something that you do not expect, it is more than what you expected to pay, you can always, decide to choose a lower category of the room, or you can decide to move to a different hospital if you don't have the money to pay. The second part of the problem is if you have not got cashless, you have gone to a non-network hospital, non-impaneled hospital, there you have to do the entire paperwork yourself to file with the insurance.
Yeah.
You don't even know what are the expenses covered by insurance. That is again a very important thing that we learned. People are not aware. So that is the second part, which is of counseling. So we have very good counselors who help people understand that what are the expenses related to their treatment which are covered by insurance. And if you want to be paid back, you have to make sure that you add all those expenses, all those evidences along with your claim. Otherwise, how will insurance come to know that you have paid that money?
Right.
So that involves a little bit of counseling. And the third part, which is, I think, the major innovation we have done, and we are the only company in the world which has solved that problem, is manufacturing of a claim. Now, this is very critical step. While you have a bill of hospital bill of 2 lakhs, and my eligibility search says that you should be paid 1.8 lakhs, but then you will not get 1.8 lakhs as is. You need to make sure that you evidence the expenses properly. Now, when people prepare their claim, they make those mistakes. They do not add proper documentation. Whatever they get from the hospital, they just dump it to the insurance company. Now, we realize one of the complexity is that hospitals do very poor job at paperwork. So there will be a lot of mismatch in the names. There will be incorrect information which is typed into medical records. Many times the documentation is completely not given to the patient. They just hold on in the hospital's case file. So a lot of these hospital practices lead to poor documentation in the hand of the customer, and consequently they just pass on that to the insurance company, leading to a lot of bad outcomes in the claim. So
Yeah.
what our technology does is it's able to identify the documents that the customer has. It's able to tell them what is the deficiency in their documentation. And so prior to claim filing, we're able to give you a laundry list of action items you have to do so that you are sorted. And our technology automatically creates the claim form. And so with that, and with the right set of documentation, when you submit your claim to the insurance company, chances are that you will get your claim easily, much faster, as well as you get to closer to the amount that you're supposed to get. So in the example that I said, so if your bill is 2 lakhs and you're supposed to get 1.8 lakhs, you follow this process on our technology, you would get 1.8 lakhs.
Yeah. Understood.
So these are the three things that we solve for.
Anuj, that is very interesting to understand the problems that you're solving. Now, one of the things we have noticed the best way to help our listeners to understand how a particular product works is to actually walk them through the entire journey of a customer. So maybe you could take a typical customer who's come to SureClaim for a certain task, right? And walk us through as to how the customer would use your offering.
So the way it would work is we have a piece of technology that we provide to hospitals,
Right.
and what we're solving for is insurance counseling. So
Correct.
it's an insurance counseling app that we provide to hospitals, and they would onboard any patient who says I have insurance, right? So this
Hmm.
person wants to use insurance, and doesn't really matter whether you are in or out network of that insurance provider.
Right.
So whether the hospital is impanded or not doesn't really matter. So you just onboard the patient on our app, and then answer a few questions, upload a few documents. In this case, would be only insurance card or the insurance policy. By the way, in case the customer has multiple policies, you can upload all of them.
Hmm.
And so once that is done, then it takes a few minutes or a few seconds for the system to come back and say that basis the information provided to it, this is our reply, whether the treatment is covered or not, and how much do you expect insurance to pay or not pay in this particular estimate. Now,
Right.
once that is done, so basis that information, the hospital is then able to have a conversation with the patient that, would you like to go ahead and take the admission now? Do you have the money with you, which insurance is not going to pay? Would you like to consider a lower category of room ward because you were asking initially for a single private AC room, right? So all this conversation happens at the hospital desk between the patient and the hospital representative. Basis this information, people admit, and then over a period of time, once their treatment is over and they discharge from the hospital, then as a second step, we have counselors at the hospitals. The patient would speak to them, and so those counselors will then guide them about their claim process for reimbursements, how they can claim that. In smaller hospitals, we normally give them a line,
Okay.
a telephone line, so we don't put representatives there. Patients tend to call us, and so the counseling happens mostly remotely. Now, once that is done, and patients want to sign up for a claim service through us, then as a step, we explain to them what the service is. Basically, they have to use the platform, and for doing that, we need the documents to be submitted to us, first of all. So they would either scan the documents using their phones and send it to us by email or other mediums, or in Bangalore, where we have a couple of our centers, they would hand it over to our desks, our counseling desk, or they would even come to our office and hand over those documents to us. We will digitize those documents for them. Now, once that is done, then the entire process is internal to us, which is of uploading into our system, finding out. So there's a little bit of assistance that we do for the customers, and so then we generate the laundry list of documents which are not there or of not appropriate quality, and then we again go back to the customer with that list. So it's a to-do list. This is something that you have to fix. If you do not, what are the consequences of that from a claim perspective? And so people normally gather those documents, or in some of the cases, as a service, we do that collection of documents from hospitals for them as well. And so that basically completes the entire documentation process. And then the entire claim is prepared and filed to insurance company. Again, it can be done by patient, or sometimes we do it for them. And after that, the claim tracking is done completely on our system. And so we have mechanisms to track the claim status. Now, one of the key offering that we have for the customer is, in case, even after doing all of that, there are questions and queries asked by insurance company, right? So they have
Hmm.
doubts in their mind regarding certain paperwork, or they need
Correct.
clarifications from doctors. So all of those things we help the customers in resolving. So some things may just need clarification, which we do it on behalf of the customer. And in other cases where there is a document requirement, and sometimes those requirements are not very evident to customers. What is it that the insurance company is asking for? So we simplify. Like, for example, someone will say, I need a doctor to write the etiology of the problem. People will get confused. What is this etiology
Correct.
that you're asking for? Or they say, I need an ICP. What is
Yeah.
ICP? Right? It's an indoor case file. So most people will not know. It's not an easy term to
Correct.
search on
Correct.
Google as well. So we'll simplify for them, and that this is your medical record which is sitting with the hospital. You need to fetch those, get a copy which is signed and sealed by the hospital, and that is something that has to go as a reply. Sometimes they would want doctors to write replies, and so doctors would need an advice, or
Hmm.
they would like to consult our experts that what is it that I'm supposed to highlight when I send a reply, because doctors do not know what information or what is the comprehensiveness of information. That is one of the challenges that we have seen over the years, that doctors just say, yeah, this was required, and we went ahead with doing the treatment, but insurance company needs further detailing of that.
Correct.
What was the issue? What was your diagnosis? What was your understanding? Why do you think this was the treatment that needed to be done, and what other alternatives you did not were not
Consider.
useful for
Yeah.
the patients? And then what? And the procedure that you did, how do you think this is going to help the patient? So all that detailing has to happen by the doctor. Like for example, one of the key thing is that insurance company wants the doctor to say that they diagnose the issue. Now doctors tend to say this problem was diagnosed, but they have to say this problem was diagnosed by me. That simple thing to say that
Right.
it is by me is the thing which is missing, and that keeps the problem rotating. So we are able to guide the doctors to write the information the way they should and not the way they do. So that helps to bridge the gap wherever that challenge takes place. But otherwise, this is how the entire journey takes place, and most customers are sort of happy.
Got it. Got it. Very interesting. So, Anuj, what you just explained, not only it is extremely interesting from a person who is interested in InsurTech, but individually as well. When I next time go to a hospital, I would have a completely different perspective on things and insurance claims. One more thing I noticed, Anuj, is that a lot of this is counseling and supporting a customer, which could be a very individual service that is being provided. So how much of is it people driven and how much of is it automated using technology?
When it comes to counseling, as I mentioned, on the admission front, we have a tool given to the hospitals. They already have an admission desk.
Right.
So the assistance part is handled by the hospitals. We do the technology part there.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm.
Now the second step is of helping people realize what are the documents they need to add in their claim. That today is completely manual in our case, and this is something that we do completely in-house. It is, we don't use any help from the hospitals in this regard. And the third step, which is of entire claim production and solving for all of that, as I mentioned, there is certain section of work that is supposed to be done by the customer, which is getting the document from the hospitals. I can't get it for you, right? So you
Yeah.
get all of that document from the hospital. You can, or you can scan it yourself, or you can use our assistants to scan for you. So that is completely left to the customer. We have a 50-50 kind of a mix there. So some people do it on their own. For elderly people who are not mobile friendly, who do not have some of these access to some of these things, or say somebody had a delivery at home, right? So you don't want the new parents to run around doing all that paperwork. So they would normally depend on us. So specifically people who are mostly not stretched, not under a lot of challenge, would do it on their own. But people who have a certain challenge would definitely lean on to us to solve for that. And after that, the technology takes over. So it looks at the documentation, it tells us what is missing. Now, how that helps is we have a great AI engine sitting behind, which uses the entire knowledge of the past claims that have happened on the platform, as well as some of the things that we collect from the market. And all of that intelligence is deployed in an individual's claim to then give those insights that, this is the list of things that need to be done. And after that, again, as I mentioned, it's 50-50. Some of the time people do it on their own, whatever is the missing documentation. Other set of the places we will do on our own. And then the claim filing happens mostly by customers. Any queries that come has to be handled at an expert level, because those things are very non-standard inputs that come from the insurance company side. So someone has to really put their head to it and understand what insurance company is asking for and how it has to be presented. That is a pure human layer inside our company.
Understood. And connected question then, Anuj, it raises is because there are three parties involved. One is, of course, the healthcare provider, the other is the customer, and third is the insurance product manufacturer. What is the revenue model behind this? Because I understand it's an intermediary model, and then it becomes very important as who is being served and who is being charged, so that there's no conflict of interest anywhere.
Yeah, so it's very simple in our case. Finally, who's getting the money? It is the patient. So
Correct.
the patient is our customer. We are a pure B2C company. However, I find the patient at the hospital. So for me, hospital is the channel, and we do not have any connection to the insurance company or even a dotted line with the insurance company. We just represent the customer in this particular case, do our job of preparing and just submitting. We do not know the insurance policy. You already had it. We do not know what treatment you're going for. Again, that is your disease, your choice of the hospital. So we do not participate in any of those things. That is between the
Right.
customer and the various providers. Our job is on behalf of the customer, help them use technology to figure out answers regarding where to admit, which packages to take, and then eventually at the time of discharge or post discharge, help those people prepare a much smarter claim, which is going to lead to a better claim outcome.
Anuj, that's actually been very interesting on how you explained the entire solution and what you do, right? And it's clearly has very good benefits for the customer. I'm just curious as to what's been the traction that you've seen so far on the product. Can you speak a little bit about that as well?
On the eligibility search side, we
Right.
have had about 90,000 odd users till date.
Okay.
And this is across about 100 to 130 odd hospitals who use our product.
Right.
And then in terms of the patients who have used the platform to file their claims, that number is about 8,500 odd till date.
Right. And what has been the typical customer profile of your customers? Do you see any patterns there as well?
So very interestingly, our portfolio represents the overall insurance market. So
Right.
3/4 of our customers have policies from their employers, and 1/4 of the customers are claiming from a retail policy. It's very strange because I think our sample is very small compared to the larger market, and yet the representation is starkly same as the national market. And when it comes to the individual profile of people, like I mentioned, because 3/4 of the customers are employees of some corporate, so this would normally be very educated people, middle class, typical middle class audience, and people who, of course, today we are very metro focused because larger part of our business comes from Bangalore. So the typical, a lot of IT crowd happens to be our customer base. On the retail front, like I mentioned, we come across a lot of people who again are employees, but they prefer to use their personal policy to file a claim because again, when they look at the eligibility search, they figure out that the policy benefits of their employees are lesser than their own individual policy. So they would prefer to
Understood.
use their personal policy, but they would normally have a company policy as well. So that is again something that we come across. And then there are a lot of people who are self-employed individuals. These might be people who run shops, or these might be people doing some kind of a services work as well.
Got it, Anuj. And from what I understand, I imagine now SureClaim is like a lawyer to the customer on all things health insurance product related, right? So that's fantastic, and I'm very excited about the future of SureClaim. So can you help us understand what's next for SureClaim? What's the future? What's the product roadmap and the strategy?
Yeah, so first of all, I would say we're not a lawyer per se, because a lawyer would always try to make the customer win, right? That is their
Yeah.
objective. In our case, that is not really the case. I have to just empower you with the right kind of tools
Right.
and technology so that you can present your case better. And the idea is customers should not require a lawyer, right? Having a platform like SureClaim is really not desirable in the larger scheme of things, right? You want the product, an insurance product, to work seamlessly for you. So we are using technology to bridge the gap which today exists in the insurance market, and we're pretty hopeful that over a period of time, most market participants will solve the problem on their own. And that is where we see the future of SureClaim, which is that we are a technology provider, right? And with the kind of push that health techs and InsurTechs have seen in since the pandemic started, right? 2021 has been a great moment for us because we always thought that from a product perspective, we would move to a platform play. And that's reality started to happen for us in 2021, where we started working with a couple of health tech and InsurTech companies who wanted to use our technology to solve for their customers. So, it solves for us because we don't need to now worry about customer acquisition. That belongs to somebody else.
Correct.
Right.
My job as a technology company is to make sure that the technology is omnipresent, people have it. And so we just provide the intelligence as an API to several players who are in the business of solving for customer experience. Now, why that is relevant is that while we do what we do, it is just solving one part of customer issue, right? But then there's a larger customer challenge of getting the policy, onboarding, retaining the policy for several years. In between, they have 100 doubts. There are complexities of experiences there as well. Claim is once in a while kind of an event, like you mentioned at the
Right.
beginning of the
Right.
this program, that you will not come across claims so often. So when that event were to happen, then we would definitely be able to patch in, and you can use our platform seamlessly within the ecosystem of your service provider. You don't need to necessarily know SureClaim.
Yeah.
It will sit within your ecosystem itself, right? So that is where we see that technology has to proliferate. Our intelligence that is right now logged inside our company has to be made available to all the participants in the market in a seamless manner, and then they will do a great job at solving our customer experience, not just at claim but at several other uh, points in the customer.
Got it. Got it. And Anuj, through our entire discussion, you touched upon the way health tech is changing and InsurTech is changing. And I have seen this industry for some time now, and insurance or InsurTech has been slightly late mover when it comes to using technology compared to, say, the banking side of the story. Now, how do you see in the future InsurTech shaping up in the Indian context?
It's a very loaded question, and uh, I'm actually a little scared to answer this.
Don't worry,
However,
Anuj.
I
We
would
won't hold you hostage to what you want to say.
yeah, but I would say that it is happening. Okay, think about it. Zomato is now willing to deliver food to you under 10 minutes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Why? Because a Zepto is delivering your toothbrush in 10 minutes.
Yep.
Right?
Correct.
Or a Stan Plus raises 20 million to make available an ambulance at your doorstep within 8 minutes. So I would say that there is a lot of customer pressure. The companies we thought are leaders, the startups that we thought are leaders in their segments, are also facing the challenge from the new guys who are coming in, right? So boundaries are now being pushed. And I would say whether it is banking, whether it is insurance, whether it is any other industry, we will not be able to survive this onslaught which is happening, right? Which is to really push the boundaries of customer experience. And so this is my take. Either I will solve it or somebody else will come and solve it for the customer, right?
Got it.
That is how everybody in the market has to think about their role as service providers. So either you solve it, which is what everyone is trying to do, or you just perish because somebody else beautifully will come and say, who would have thought that there'll be a problem in e-commerce or food delivery? I mean, other kind of delivery. And Zepto came and said, no, 10 minutes is the promise. And I mean, I've been a beneficiary of getting stuff at my home under 3 minutes. So I think I'm pampered, and I would demand all of these transactions from other industries as well. So I think this is where we are, and this is true for every industry, not just in InsurTech. But coming to the specific question that whether what we see today, the participant that we see today, do they have a claim to solving it? I don't know. I don't have an answer. But if they don't solve it, somebody else will.
Interesting take on the future, Anuj. Anuj, if someone wanted to know more about SureClaim, what's the best way to do this?
So I think I would love to speak to people face to face or or directly. So people can reach out to me on LinkedIn. If
Okay.
they search for SureClaim, and they can find me there. Or
Yeah.
people could write to me on Anuj, ANUJ @sureclaim.in, SureClaim.in. So that's Anuj @sureclaim.in. I'm also on Twitter, so people can reach me on Twitter. My handle is @SCRIPTAJ.
Excellent, Anuj. I'll include all those details in the show notes of the episode. It was amazing speaking with you, Anuj, and all the best to you and your team on this journey ahead.
Thanks, Elroy.
That's it from India Fintech Diaries for this week. Do log on to our website, indiafintechdiaries.com, for exclusive content. Until next time, mask on and stay safe.